This episode was proudly made possible by the all-new 2015 Subaru Legacy. It's not just a sedan, it's a Subaru.
Ebola has been making headlines lately, and if the hype is to be believed, we're all already dead. But if you're just mostly dead and want to know more, here are some common misconceptions about Ebola clarified. Hello germaphobes out there, I'm Julian with D-News, and I have some info that might help you sleep a little better. First, let's douse the flames of panic and clear up that Ebola has not become airborne. It's adapted to survive and thrive in bodily fluids, and some pretty radical and unlikely things would have to happen for it to change its mode of transportation. It would need to develop proteins that could attach to the upper respiratory pathway, and its lipid membrane means it doesn't survive out of fluids. Because it's already doing just fine with its current mode of transmission, it doesn't have the need to evolve. So, if you find yourself around Ebola patients, take comfort that at least the air you breathe isn't trying to kill you. These limitations help put another Ebola worry to rest. Industrialized nations are going to be able to stop the virus's spread much more effectively than the West African nations that have been hit. Knowing how the virus spreads means that we also know how not to spread it. Avoiding bodily fluids of the infected goes a long way, and casual contact with them isn't really enough to spread it. That also means a panic over a global pandemic is ill-founded. Ebola kills pretty quickly and has up to a 90% mortality rate, though thanks to the efforts of the humanitarian workers, it's closer to 50% in West Africa. Those horrible attributes are what makes the disease so scary, but it also means Ebola doesn't become as widespread as it otherwise could. That's right, Ebola could be worse if it actually killed more slowly. Hooray! The last misconception I'd like to clear up is that the outbreak is on the decline. While the industrialized world probably won't feel the effects of it, people in West Africa are still suffering. Dr. Estrella Lacery, a tropical medicine advisor for Doctors Without Borders, has called the international response slow and weak, with China and Cuba the only governments that have sent aid. China has sent 115 workers with a mobile lab and another 59 pledged, while Cuba's 165 workers are scheduled to get there by early October. President Obama added the United States to that list on September 16th with a plan that projected to cost $763 million over 6 months. And it's still likely not enough to contain the outbreak. More workers and beds are needed to treat the sick, and earning the public's trust so people can be educated about Ebola is crucial to stopping its spread. How are you getting involved to make the world a better place? Have you volunteered or gotten involved with the fight against Ebola? If you don't have a story to share, I urge you to check out doctorswithoutborders.org to donate. Stay healthy, and I'll see you next time on D-News.
This episode of D-News was proudly made possible by the all-new 2015 Subaru Legacy. It's not just a sedan, it's a Subaru.
Ebola is a horrific infection that causes a horrible, messy death. But technically, it's not the infection that kills you, it's you that kills you. Hey D-Newsers, Trace here. Ebola is ravaging West Africa with over 1,400 dead and almost 3,000 infected. The outbreak is real and horrible. And though it is a terrible infection, it's not actually the virus, it's your immune system that's doing the killing due to a cytokine storm. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let me explain how we got here. Ebola, or EVD, was first identified in 1972. 2 simultaneous outbreaks occurred in the Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Those 2 people were likely infected by fruit bats, and the virus was named for the Ebola River, which runs by the town in DRC where the virus was found. Today the outbreak is happening in West Africa, 2,500 miles from the DRC, and it was probably moved there by fruit bats. When a regular virus infects you, like the common cold, cytokines are created in response to send signals to the immune system. A cytokine is a protein produced by your body to send signals between cells. There are many different kinds of cytokines, and they're used by a bunch of your systems, including the immune system. The system then sends out dendritic cells, which eat the infection, learn about it, and then tell the immune system to produce antibodies, which stop the brothers of that virus from further infecting your body. When Ebola infects your body, it attacks those immune systems that launch the dendritic cells first. Without that dendritic instruction, the antibodies don't have any blueprints to use to to combat the virus. Thus, Ebola replicates unabashedly, exploding cells and running wild, and eventually the immune system throws everything it has at it to try and stop the infection. That is called a cytokine storm. The cytokine storm is like your body's version of DEFCON 1. All your body's defenses come shooting into your bloodstream. There are antibodies and white blood cells flying everywhere trying to destroy this infestation. But like global total thermonuclear war from war games, it does harm the enemy virus, but neither side wins. To put it simply, due to the cytokine storm, the walls of your blood vessels become more permeable. Thus, blood and plasma leak into the surrounding tissue and sometimes out of the eyes, nose, ears, and it's taking Ebola with it. In response to its own onslaught, your body then releases nitric oxide to try and regulate your blood pressure. But that nitric oxide damages the blood vessels even more, thinning your blood and dropping your blood pressure even further. This causes something like septic shock, or shock due to low blood pressure. As you probably know, Ebola is spread by infected bodily fluids. That includes blood, plasma, stool, and urine. But it also can spread through spit that might fly during a conversation, sweat, and fluids that leak out of the body even after death. The World Health Organization says that it almost always spreads human to human, though it can be from infected meat. And it takes between 48 hours and 3 weeks before a newly infected person may show symptoms. They also say there's no vaccines and no proven treatments for Ebola, though it's important to note that infection isn't a death sentence. 47% of carriers survive. How does this make you feel about your immune system? Also, do you like war games? Because that movie was totally awesome. We've got a comment section, so get down there and use it. And for more information on Ebola cures, check out this video right here. Come follow me on Twitter. I'm Trace Dominguez. Thanks for watching D News. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe.
The current Ebola outbreak in Western Africa is the largest that humanity has ever experienced. Will we ever have a vaccine for this scary disease? Hey, this is Karen for D News. The ongoing Ebola epidemic in several Western African countries continues to dominate news headlines, and for good reason. In today's global society, the potential for spread of a virus like this is massive. Ebola is easily transmissible between humans through body fluids, which is why those that are at the highest risk of contracting it are healthcare providers and family members of those that are already sick. There is currently no cure for Ebola, and between 50 and 90% of those that catch the virus will die from it. Those that manage to fight through the infection generally do so through supportive healthcare measures like blood pressure and oxygen maintenance and medications to control fever, allow the blood to clot, and to prevent other infections. There's currently no available vaccine for Ebola, although a study recently published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences shows that scientists are making significant progress in developing one for wild gorillas and chimpanzees. Now, you may not know that Ebola is actually one of the leading killers of wild apes. It's actually killed over 1/3 of the world's gorilla population, leading to their status as critically endangered. Now, because the Ebola virus spreads so easily, conservationists generally support vaccine development, even though they are potentially dangerous. Vaccines involve administering small doses of the offending bacteria or virus to the body so that our immune systems can mount an appropriate response. This way, we become preemptively prepared in case we ever come into contact with the pathogen again. This is where it's tricky to develop vaccines for diseases like Ebola. There is no amount that is safe to administer to apes or humans. However, scientists have produced what seems to be an effective Ebola vaccine using a virus-like particle, a fragment of viral coat protein. Now, since a fully replicating virus is not being transferred, this is a much safer way to make use of the natural immune reactions in the animals that are receiving it. Now, studies in the past have demonstrated that this virus particle vaccine is both safe and effective in macaques, one of our primate cousins. But the vaccine was recently administered to chimpanzees, and it was found to be safe as well. Now, just to be clear, chimpanzees were not challenged with the Ebola virus itself. They were inoculated with the particle vaccine in order to see if it was safe for their bodies and to see if they could mount a suitable immune response. And they could. Antibodies harvested from vaccinated chimps were transferred to mice, who were then challenged by the Ebola virus, and the mice were all protected. Okay, so this is huge news for wild ape populations worldwide, and it's potentially good news for humans too. The NIH has just announced plans to fast-track this vaccine and 2 others to phase 1 clinical trials this September. It seems like the use of a viral particle vaccine represents a very promising technique for protecting us from deadly pathogens like Ebola. What do you think? Should we be putting more effort into developing an Ebola vaccine? Let us know in the comments below and click here to subscribe for more D News every day of the week.